special honor and privilege for me to have Mary Ann Horn, Mary Ann Ridge. I never knew you'd be a rich girl before. And your sis, I'm glad to meet you. Finally meet your husband. I don't know that I had ever met him in all these years. Good to meet you. Thanks for your years of service to God and the kingdom and the church. But, your wife was a wonderful lady as a kid, Trebek.
I know that.
How did you know that? I knew that. I was in Trebek back there. Turn with me, if you will, to Luke chapter 19. Beginning in verse 1. Jesus entered and passed through Jericho. Behold, there was a man named Zacchaeus, which was the chief among the publicans, and he was rich. And he sought to see Jesus who he was, and could not for the press, because he was little of stature. And he ran before and climbed up into a sycamore tree to see him, for he was to pass that way. And when Jesus came to the place, he looked up and saw him, and said unto him, Zacchaeus, make haste and come down, for today I must abide at thy house. I've been trying to preach for some over 50 years now. I know I don't look that old. Forgive me, Lord. Pastored about 47 years or so, and thank God for it. It was a good ride. It's been a good life. God's blessed it. Oh, by the way, Mary would like to be here this morning, but we both had strep throat, and I think she's over the contagious part, but she's still coughing her head off, so she couldn't be here today. As a pastor, I made a lot of visits, a lot of calls in the 50 years or so since I started back yonder ago. So, but I ask you this morning in your imagination, will you go with me and I'd like to ask you to make some calls with me. Pastors used to make calls, some of them still do, thank God. I'd like to visit 5 houses with you this morning, and I'd like to take you along. Jesus was passing through Jericho. He had reservation for lodging. You and I usually make our reservation ahead of time. We know we're going to be at a certain town or a certain place. Jesus had reservations for lodging at the house of Zacchaeus. Only thing is, Zacchaeus didn't know it, and Mrs. Zacchaeus didn't know it. Jesus was the only one that knew it. Zacchaeus was probably a Jew by birth. He was a tax collector for the Roman government, and so he was looked upon by the Jews as a heathen. He was rich, and therefore it made him even more unlikely. It was even more unlikely that he would pay attention to an impoverished Messiah preaching a doctrine of self-denial as Jesus preached. However, something piqued his curiosity, and he sought to see Jesus. The road was crowded with people going to Jerusalem to the Passover. So Zacchaeus climbed up a nearby tree. I can envision as he peered through there that the leaves and limbs sort of occluded his vision of Jesus. But it didn't bother Jesus at all. You see, he knew exactly where Zacchaeus was. He knew exactly the condition of his heart and his home. And he knows exactly where you are. He knows your heart. He knows your mind. He knows where you are and how you're living, and your commitment or non-commitment to him. Zacchaeus climbed up the tree. He couldn't see Jesus very well maybe, but he wanted to see him better than he had seen him. Thank God. Jesus saw him. And the fame of the cure of the blind man may have been the cause Zacchaeus' curiosity about Jesus? We don't know. But he said to him, Zacchaeus, come on down. I'm going to your house today. Sort of a self-invitation. Does it occur to you that Jesus invites himself to every home? Jesus invites himself to every heart. And he wants to go home with you today. He went home with Zacchaeus. You could use your imagination a little and imagine, it may be like the time that my daddy invited the preacher home with us. And I don't think they had ever been there before. One of those deals. Daddy invited the new preacher home with us. Mama had no idea that the preacher was coming. So on the way, we didn't normally shop on Sunday, but on the way, I remember that day we had to stop at the grocery store because Mama had nothing prepared. I wonder what the response was at Zacchaeus' house that day. If Mrs. Zacchaeus said, "You've invited this rabbi and I have nothing to feed him." I don't know that she said that. Anyway, Zacchaeus received him joyfully, and I think that means in the Jewish culture that she received him joyfully as well. Zacchaeus had seen he had seen what Jesus was. He'd watched him as he walked along the road. And now he wished to hear what he was. He rejoiced in the honor that God had bestowed upon him and his household. How often Jesus proposes to stay at our house. Do we rejoice that he comes, or do we find there no vacancy signs? Are there no vacancy signs lying on your coffee table? What would that be, preacher? Magazines that he doesn't approve. Would there be no vacancy signs in the bedrooms of some of you young people? What does that mean, preacher? Could be magazines that Jesus wouldn't approve. Could be music with words that Jesus wouldn't approve of. Could be attitudes that he would approve. Turn to Mark chapter 10. I'll try to tie this together if you'll stay with me after a while. Mark chapter 10, verses 46 through 52. Mark 10, 46. And they came to Jericho, and as he went out of Jericho with his disciples and a great number of people, blind Bartimaeus, the son of Timaeus, sat by the highway side begging. And when he heard that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to cry out and say, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." And many charged him that he should hold his peace. "Shut up, old man." Can you imagine what would happen in our society? But he cried the more a great deal, "Thou Son of David, have mercy on me." Jesus stood still. That means he stopped. Jesus stood still and commanded him to be called. Call him. Somebody's calling him. Bring him over here. And then they called the blind man, saying unto him, "Be of good comfort. Rise, he calleth thee. Get up, come on, Bartimaeus, he's calling for you." And he, casting away his garment, rose and came to Jesus. Jesus answered and said unto him, "What wilt thou that I should do unto thee?" The blind man said unto him, "Lord, that I might receive my sight. I want to see." Jesus said unto him, "Go thy way, thy faith hath made thee whole." And immediately, that means right now, immediately, he received his sight. And followed Jesus in the way. Bartimaeus was so named because Timaeus, or Talmus, or Talmai was the name of his father. And so the son would be called Bartalmus or Bartholomew or Bartimaeus. The father and son are probably mentioned by name because they're well known in this area. And he sat by the highway side, rattling his cup and begging. Went down below Los Angeles years ago, across the line there into Mexico. I've never seen as many beggars in my life. They do it a little different now. Kids run around, dollar, 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 dollar. But years ago, we had a man in our town that lost his legs, and he would sit on the street with a tin cup rattling. I think the tin cup was there purposefully so you could hear it. I can imagine that Bartimaeus may have had a tin cup that day as he sat on the highway rattling his cup. He heard a commotion coming up the street. And he heard the footsteps of many feet. Somebody told him that Jesus was passing by. Jesus! He'd heard of this Jesus. Son of David, have mercy on me. I think that when he said Son of David, in his mind, he meant Messiah, Savior. Many in the crowd yelled at the old man to shut up, but he shouted even more. Jesus stopped. Has he stopped for you lately? Or have you called him? The Lord's been working on me about this in this business of prayer. I believe prayer is a lot more important than even the church has ever given me credit. There's a lot of horsepower. Maybe that's not a good word or a good analogy, but wrapped up in prayer. I believe God wants to do a lot more for us. Jesus said when he stopped, he said, call him. Good news, Bartimaeus, Jesus is calling for you. Threw his coat aside and jumped to his feet. And I think somebody must have led him to Jesus. Most people are led to Jesus by somebody else. Who are you leading to Jesus? Jesus said, Bartimaeus, what do you want me to do for you? I want to see. He said, go. Your faith has healed you. Immediately he received his sight. Followed Jesus along the road. Jesus was being questioned by the disciples of John. Stay with me, I'll tie it all together. Jesus was being questioned by John's disciples about why it was that they and the Pharisees fast, but Jesus' disciples did not fast at that time. And while he was explaining this, a ruler came and told Jesus that his daughter had just died, but that if Jesus would come and lay hands on her, that she'd live. Is that faith or is that not faith? Brother, that's faith. Jesus, if you'll just come and lay hands on her, she'll be all right. Jesus and his disciples went with him toward the ruler's house. But while they were on the way, and this is where we break into the story, behold, Matthew chapter 9, verse